Kurt Cobain, Seattle, flannels, Doc Martens, Hole. Those are likely some of the things that come to mind when you think of grunge. And if you're really in the know, maybe Tina Bell, who created the grunge sound as we come to think of it now, through the Seattle band that she led, Bam Bam. But do you think of Kirsten Owen? You should. As one New York Times reporter put it, Kirsten Owen is a household name, quote, if you happen to live in the kind of household that was careful not to break the shrink wrap on its copy of Madonna's Sex, end quote. Kirsten Owen got into modeling through the cajoling of her older sister, only to end up becoming the avatar upon which influential fashion designers would mold what is now one of the most recognizable fashion genres that would help define a youth culture in the 90s and in pop culture as a whole. Owen defined the look of a moment in time. Kirsten Owen, born in the late 60s in Montreal as an infant, was so pale and so blonde that the doctor had her tested for albinism. At 5'11", angular, pale, and lithe, she has been noted as, quote, the grandmother of waif, a contemporary of Linda Evangelista. They couldn't be any further apart when it comes to the type of look they exude. While Linda and her notable crew of Amazonian overt glam opulent beauties like Chrissy Turlington, Cindy Crawford, and Naomi Campbell were ruling the catwalk, Owen was also around, with her unique look starting a quiet revolution which would eventually transition into the dominating alternative looks that were more stark, unruly, and avant-garde, which helped to translate in print and runway. The tall alternative gamine opened the doors for the likes of Kate Moss, Shalom Harlow, and Karen Elson, who took the baton to usher in the gaunt, rail-thin new beauty standards that the industry would set. One French industry insider jokingly referred to the look as the, quote, Belgian connection. It was a look at the time that was thought to be a passing fad, just like the seasonal trends that came and went. However, it was a look that never went away, and even into her 30s, Owen was booking shows for designers who wanted that look on their runway. An insider in the 90s said of Owen, quote, you kind of get the feeling that you know about the other models, but Kirsten is a complete enigma. I never even knew what language she spoke. She's never been desperate to adapt herself to the moment. The moment sort of adapts to her, end quote. Even Owen's walk was worlds apart from the graceful, leggy swagger epitomized by Naomi Campbell and Yasmin Ghouri. Owen's runway walk is steely and agile, likened to, as one insider put it, quote, a laid-back 70s keep-on-truckin' walk, end quote, and some have said that her walk has a, quote, gravity-defying slouch, end quote, and another added, she's the original of that butch walk and pale, less sexy look, while some have added, little bounce at the bottom of each step as if she were sinking into the spongy turf of a putting green after a rainstorm. However it was, it only added to her whole quirky anti-fashion package. During one particular runway show in Owen's presence, Karl Lagerfeld instructed all of his models to walk as she did on the runway, with purpose and be more masculine. It wouldn't be the first time a designer has tried to cultivate the quintessence in which Owen has embodied for so long. During another season, when Owen wasn't available, she was in such high demand that in her absence, so many of the models cast that season for shows ended up looking like Kirsten Owen clones. Even as a supermodel that is a veteran and an influential muse, she doesn't see herself as a supermodel, saying, quote, I don't see myself that way. The word is an abstraction. When I think of supermodels, I think of Claudia Schiffer and those other girls, end quote. However, she recounts the moment she felt she had truly made it was when legendary fashion photographer Paolo Roversi said to her at the end of an Italian Vogue shoot, Kirsten, modeling is an art and you are an artist. I was like, oh my God, that was amazing coming from him, you know? So that was the moment I felt I had made it and I was feeling really successful. End quote. Known for being not much of a talker, which lends more to a quiet dignity than a snobby demeanor, but in reality, she said she's actually just really shy. Much has been said about how out there and self-sufficient she is. Maybe it has something to do with growing up in rural Ontario in a log cabin that her mother renovated alongside her sisters. At the age of 14, she dropped out of high school and moved to Toronto in the mid-80s. Her mother, Joan, who reluctantly supported her daughter's choice, said to Owen, as she made the move to the Big Smoke, which is Toronto for the unacquainted, that she'd never get anywhere without a high school diploma. Her mother would end up having to eat her own words, because within 11 years, Owen was pulling close to $1 million a year in earnings through her modeling career, commanding upwards of $15,000 for a day's work. After all, it was her sister Jillian, 5 years her senior, who kept prodding Owen to get into modeling. Jillian, who had always wanted to be a model and live the high-flying lifestyle that came with it, opted to recruit her sister into modeling instead of making the attempt herself. She saw in her sister something that the fashion movers and shakers would eventually also come to see at one point, in her persuasion telling Owen that she could be bigger than Christie Brinkley. Jillian proved to be helpful in getting her younger sister's foot in the door. When Owen moved to Toronto as a teen high school dropout, it was Jillian, who at the time was a waitress, would take her little sister to agencies with photos that she had taken of Owen. Owen started to work consistently as a model at 17. In those in-between years of 14 and 17, she was working as the bus girl at the iconic Toronto metal and alternative club, the Big Bop. It was there that a regular at the club, who was already a model, said she'd introduced Owen to the owner of the agency she was with. Following through on her word, she took Owen to meet Judy Welch of the Judy Welch Agency in Toronto, where she was signed. One of the agents at that first agency recalled Owen as unassuming, unpretentious, and, quote, "You couldn't book her if your life depended on it," end quote. As a novice model, Owen told of a time during one of her first go-sees for a catalog job, she showed up to the appointment wearing her boyfriend's underwear, which upon later reflection said, quote, "I guess that was highly unprofessional," end quote. On another occasion, Owen later commented on her dispassion for fashion in her teenage years. Quote, "In my teens, I hated it. They were always trying to change me. I didn't like that they were always trying to take something away from me. I wasn't into trying to look sexy. I was into being a punk. I hated wearing makeup. I thought it was boring," end quote. Many have remarked on her off-duty style, even much later as she became more accomplished, as extremely low-key. One day she'd be wearing jeans and a t-shirt promoting a Hamilton, Ontario rock band after finishing a job at New York Fashion Week. The next day, you might spot her wearing Birkenstocks with handcrafted clothes from family members while she was waiting for hair and makeup at a high-profile runway show. Like many other Canadian supermodels in the making at that time, it wasn't until Owen arrived in Paris in her late teens during the spring of '87 that she started to catch some career-elevating breaks. "I saw this blonde angel in the corridor," creative director Marc Ascoli said of Owen, when he spotted her in a hallway at a Paris office in 1987. He booked her right away for a Martine Sipon campaign, which all happened so quickly that Ascoli remembered Owen's reaction, which was, "You mean today?" Within her first year, she scored the cover of Elle Italy, Elle France, and Elle Spain. The unassuming Owen started to become seen as a kind of model's model, where up-and-comers that worked alongside her looked up to her as a source of inspiration. Photographers also loved her as well. She became a muse to so many notable, influential photographers, including Jürgen Teller, who became a personal friend and cast her in one of his short films. The legendary photogs Paolo Roversi and Peter Lindbergh. Maybe it's because, as one senior fashion director at Harper's Bazaar put it, "I just feel like she's an incredibly beautiful person, inside as well as out. She's always brings so much modernity to what she wears. She transcends age or trend," end quote. Fashion designers were also big fans of Owen, especially the ones that helped to shape what we consider to be the exemplary codes of grunge, modernism, and avant-garde in the 20th and 21st century. Designers such as Helmut Lang, David Sims, Marc Jacobs, Melanie Ward, Martine Sipon, Yohji Yamamoto, Rei Kawakubo, and Anne Muhlmeister Owen had put herself in an almost self-exile from the industry when she had her first child at 22 in the early 90s, at a time when models were told their careers were over if they had children. So she went off to New Mexico to fade into obscurity, but Helmut Lang came calling for her specifically and flew her out to Paris to be in his show. It would be one of a handful of shows that she had walked for Helmut. Though she didn't expect Helmut to summon her at that stage in her life, it would prove to be the event that would solidify her legacy. After the Helmut Lang show, she felt confident enough to return to Paris and more work came in. From there, she started to work more closely with Jürgen Teller, who was at ID at the time. Prior to that, she was mostly doing more commercial and safe types of gigs. She remembered those years working with Helmut Lang. Quote, Helmut would make you feel like you could be emotional and you didn't have to cover up and try and be this professional model. He was just really cool, really nice, and really warm. End quote. Canadian stylist Dominique Vienne once said of Owen, quote, everything you put on Kirsten Owen looks contemporary. She would have been beautiful in the 1800s. She'll be beautiful in the year 4000, end quote. Owen would later become a muse to Helmut Lang, Yohji Yamamoto, and Jürgen Teller. Mainstream designers were also pursuing Owen for the edgy and otherworldly appeal she had. Labels like Chanel, Versace, Gucci, Ungaro, Calvin Klein, and Fendi came calling for runway and print campaigns. She was even presented by Marc Jacobs when he received the Women's Wear Designer of the Year from the CFDA in 1998. A veteran in the industry by 98, with 11 years under her belt, Owen had booked 60 shows for the upcoming season in Milan, Paris, and New York, on top of the countless campaigns that she had lined up for Fendi, Alberta Ferretti, and Louis Vuitton, to name a few. Despite her success in the industry, she's pretty unaffected by it. Noted as a model that likes to keep most of her personal relationships outside of the realm of fashion, with the exception of the late supermodel Stella Tennant, who she knew since her early days in the industry and remained close. With Owen, who once said of Tennant, quote, she has a very good energy, she just has a good vibe, end quote. She also wasn't known to be one to party or to go out that much, opting instead to stay very family-oriented and focus on hobbies like papier-mâché, and later on, when she had her son and daughter, to focus on raising them. Had she not found success in modeling in her younger days, she dreamed of becoming a cowgirl and a school teacher and a singer in a bar, where her day would consist of rounding up the cows in the morning, then going to her job as a school teacher, then in the evening singing. Owen sees the current fashion landscape of social media as quite surface level, saying, quote, it's become so superficial. It's fun for some people to do Instagram and stuff like that. I enjoy it, but I really enjoy it when people post really honest photos, comments, instead of always pretending everything is so great in their life. I just can't stand it, end quote. Nowadays, in her 50s, she's still very much busy and modeling while being a mother of two, booking for Vogue Italia, Numero, and walking for Chanel, Rick Owens, and Mary Katransu. She's taken up acting classes, which she says she loves, remarking that it requires so much more than modeling. Quote, you don't have to be pretty all the time. You can go places emotionally and be ugly, end quote. So you may see her on the big screen or small screen sometime soon. Owen has been nominated for 2022 Model of the Year for the Canadian Fashion Awards, one of many Model of the Year CAFA nominations she's received over the years. And she accomplished that dream of being on the farm. She now owns and operates a 56-acre organic blueberry farm in Vermont, saying, I've never worked so hard in my life taking on this farm. In a time where the life cycle of a model has sped up drastically, when asked how she has managed to have such longevity in an industry that is so youth-obsessed, she said, they trust me, they know I'm professional, and in the end, I bring it. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, comment your thoughts, and check out these other Canuck Catwalk videos. If you really want to help, please consider supporting the channel. Links are in the description. Thank you for watching.